Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of 1 Million Cups. My name is Peter Hauk. I'm the Community Manager for the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, a member of the 1 Million Cups Organizing Committee, and today I'm coming to you live from Pinnacle Production Studios in beautiful Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This is our last virtual 1 Million Cups before we go back in person next week. It's been great. Thank you to the Pinnacle team for all the sizzle that you see on your screen right now. For those of you who don't know, 1 Million Cups is a program put on by the Kauffman Foundation in startup communities all across the country, and it was started based on the idea, what could happen if we all got together and had 1 million cups of coffee? What sort of things could we do over a cup of joe? So that's what we're trying to set out to figure out here today. And we've got a great program for you. We've got Matt Hastad from Remedy Brewing Company and Matt Paulson from Market Beat in the studio with us today. But before we get to that, let's take care of some housekeeping. So I see some faces on my screen. Is there anyone who would like to introduce themselves who has never been to 1 Million Cups before? Okay, if no one's going to chime in, we'll move on to our next order of business, which is our calendar of events. Does anyone out there in the World Wide Web have an event that they would like to share with our community?
Hey, Peter. I have a few events I can share from Startup Sioux Falls. So the first event is called Virtual Startup Pitch Night, and this is sponsored by the Falls Angel Fund. This is next Thursday from 8 till 9 p.m. If anyone attended our nonprofit pitch night last fall, it'll be a similar format where the audience attending will have the opportunity to vote for their favorite pitch, and the winners have the opportunity to win some money to put towards building their venture. We have 6 awesome people that will be pitching. These pitchers were participants in our most recent Co-Starters Accelerator program. So we have Ben Whitley with Booth Table, Corey Poor with Little Tykes University, Megan Raposa of Sioux Falls Simplified, Dakota Jordan of Dakota Yoga, Sanaa Abaresk from Sanaa's Gourmet, and Walter Ports and Chris Hintz from Helen's Plan. And then the second event that I just want to mention is Hey Sioux Falls 2021. We are so excited about this event coming up in May. It's going to be May 20th, starting at 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. This will be at the Orpheum Theater, and it's an event to celebrate the trials and triumphs of entrepreneurship. And we should have some finalists announced here in the next few weeks. I'll put the links in the chat.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else out there have an event that they'd like to share? Sadie Sweer.
Well, good morning, Peter Hauk. Hello, everybody. This is Sadie Sweer, the Community Outreach Coordinator downtown Sioux Falls. There's lots of things happening this weekend. It's the first day of May, and kicking it off, the Falls Park Farmers Market is back for the summer. So definitely check out this place with local vendors with produce, veggies, fruit, some soap, some other display and product vendors, and there's going to be live music, and it's right across the street from Falls Park. So Falls Park Farmers Market's kicking off. Washington Pavilion has a ton of great new exhibitions. They have a thing called a shadow display, and what it is, it's these wire art fixtures, and you have to shine your phone's flashlight on them to see the shadow. So there's that, as well as Storybook Land, which is a great kids activity to go check out. So Washington Pavilion, as well as some other things happening all across downtown, but it's really exciting to see all of these entrepreneurs and local business owners starting up events again. So visit dtsf.com for all kinds of different information.
All right. Thank you, Sadie Sweer. It's always fun to hear what's shaking in downtown Sioux Falls. If you don't know, there's always something shaking in downtown Sioux Falls, as Sadie Sweer would say. So it's great. Does anyone else have any other events? Going once. Going twice. Sold. Okay. Now we will move on to the main event. I have with me Matt Hastad from Remedy Brewing. He's been on before, but we're going to get an update. to see what's shaking with Remedy Brewing. Thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Kind of a fun situation to be in, you know, to come back about almost 2 years now since I last did 1 million cups. And you kind of look back and go, man, what do I have to say to update anybody after 2 years? But when you actually look at it, it's insane what you can do in 2 years. So I'm very excited to be back. So thank you for that. And thank you all for tuning in. Such a great program here at 1 million cups. So with that, I'm just going to kind of dive into it. I know I kind of told our story last time I was here. So for a quick recap, just about 4 years ago, we opened Remedy Brewing downtown at 8th and Railroad. We opened on a 5-barrel brew house that yearly could put out an annual production of about 850 barrels. So for those who don't know, that's roughly 2,800 gallons. It's a decent amount of beer. But very quickly after opening up, the Sioux Falls community was so supportive that we hit our maximum capacity and decided that we needed to expand. So back in the very early stages of 2019, we started an expansion project and put in a 30-barrel brew house just a couple blocks south of the Premier Center. And we're very fortunate to have that opened up before the end of 2019. And we were able to get into canning and much more production. So we expanded from about 850 barrels a year up to about 7,000 barrels a year. What that allowed us to do was very quickly ramp up and be able to distribute our beer across the state of South Dakota. So we kind of started, and I'll dive into a few pictures here that I brought with, but we started with a very base core of beers that we think are very approachable, easily drinkable for everybody. So we did our Queen Bee, our Heavy Metal Dakota Classic, and then we've done a rotating hazy IPA line as well. Those have been very well received across the state, and so we were very fortunate. But one of the fun things to kind of look at was what actually goes into making all of that. We get to purchase cans now, and cans are really fun to see come in because they come in by the pallet. The pallets are very light, they're easy to lift, but we can purchase by the truckload, or we can purchase usually a little bit smaller in the spot. So when we first started, cans were running right about 8-9 cents a can, depending on what we were looking at. And due to the aluminum shortage last year, they very quickly doubled, some even tripled in price. And so very quickly we were in a position where we were distributing cans across the state. Throughout the shutdown, everybody was drinking at home a lot more, so our cans were doing wonderfully. But our core business and the main part of our business, which is both bar and restaurant sales and our taproom sales, were pretty much wiped out. And then on top of that, we had extra costs with the cans due to the aluminum shortage. So it was a very interesting year for us, and we very quickly had to kind of pivot our business model on what we were looking for. But some of the fun things to kind of look at are what does our new facility look like? This was actually installation day, so you see a giant forklift there setting in some of our tanks and some of the stainless steel that we have. So it's a very fun, very pretty thing. But during this expansion, we took a very dilapidated, rundown warehouse and decided to kind of rehab it, refurbish it, and bring it back up into a full working production facility. So there's a lot of growing pains with that. When you get into an older building, you get into a lot of demolition costs and a lot of unique surprises when you start tearing down walls and punching through floors. But it was a very fun and very interesting thing. One of the great things about this production facility, too, is we were able to put in a full filtration system that allows a lot of our beers to be shelf stable, which helps us with our sales because then we can get more end displays and things like that on the floor in your favorite retailers. We also switched and we started doing some bulk packaging. Instead of just a 6-pack, you can now get 12 packs of both our Queen Bee and our Dakota Classic beers. And that brings in a whole new level of challenges as well, because a lot of our packaging is still done by hand. So very labor intensive, but we've got an amazing team. We were able to expand our team and bring on some great guys in our production side. And it's really just helped us grow and put us in a position that we really think can explode this year. So we're very excited about the future. We tried to take as much time as we could to position ourselves to be able to take advantage of what we feel is going to be a slow return to normalcy, and put ourselves in a position to really take off this year. So I'm very excited to see where our brand grows. And a big part of that too is expanding our offerings and having some fun, because beer's fun. So we purchased a Queen Bee mascot costume, and you'll see the Queen Bee mascot running around downtown, running around at a lot of the events we throw this year. We've got some people that, shockingly, it's not hard to find people who want to be a big beer can and run around. So it's been very fun for us to be able to put some different people in there and see what kind of personalities they can bring out of the Queen Bee. But with that, we then tried to kind of do a tour across the state and get pictures with our Queen Bee for marketing in a bunch of different areas. And so if anybody knows the iconic Buffalo at Al's Oasis, that was a fun spot for us to stop. But very quickly we found out too that without having the restaurants, bars, and our tap room drinking as many suds as they typically do, we had some excess capacity. So we very quickly determined which markets were strategic for us to get into from an expansion as well. One of the very easy ones for us to both get into, and that's very close to us outside of the state, was the Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska markets. So we were very excited to be able to jump into there. We launched in Omaha back in March, and very quickly they've become one of our best markets as well. So it's just fun for us to see our brand continuing to grow and continuing to push what we're trying to do and the beer that we like to drink. So one of the fun things that we've also done and we're doing this year is collaborations. So you'll see down at our tap room, we pretty much run off of collaborations, events, and fundraisers. One of the big things we always try to do is both give back to the community, but partner with people in the community that maybe need to raise awareness or are mutually beneficial both for our brand and their brand. And people love to get together to drink a beer and raise money. I mean, it's a great avenue for anybody who's looking from a nonprofit to do it. So a little bit of a plug where reach out to us if you're looking to host an event. We love to do that down at our tap room. And that actually kind of brings me to my next point and the next guest that we have here, Matt Paulson. So I'll jump into this next little screen here, but Matt came up with a really, really great idea about how to possibly raise some money for some nonprofits in the area that maybe struggled throughout the pandemic or whose business model completely got upended. And two of the nonprofits that we've worked with a lot in the past were both B Squad Dog Rescue and the Sioux Empire Pit Rescue. So Matt approached us with a very, very unique idea, and I'll kind of let you talk a little bit about what Market Brew is and what our goals are with it.
Yeah, so Market Brew is obviously a kind of a huge proponent of community collaboration, and we think things happen better when people work together in a community. And we're really trying to think, what does the future of philanthropy look like in our community? And I think some of the old models of just people in back rooms writing big checks are maybe coming to an end or not going to be the same way as it was before. I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration that takes place, a lot more awareness building, just kind of more things that are funded by the entire community and not just by a few people. So we've been doing a few experiments. The first one was the Market Beat Burger. We raised a lot of money for who was that?
31,000 for Call to Freedom.
Yes, for Call to Freedom. Yes, my brain is not operating at full capacity this morning. But they're going to take that money and use some of it, use it along with other money to build a house for sex trafficking victims in the state. And we thought that project was a lot of fun. Made a burger with Chef Lance's, almost got first place, lost by like 0.04 points. I thought, well, we got pretty close this time. Let's do it again in a different way. So we had done a few projects with Remedy in the past. One of them we did had an event called Failure Fest about 2 years ago. And that was, we had them make a beer for us for that event. was kind of one-off thing. I thought we could do this at a bigger scale. So we thought, hey, let's make a market beat beer and see what happens. So we approached Matt and Tyler at Remedy and said, hey, what would this look like? And who are some charities that you'd want to support? And they mentioned B Squad and Sioux Empire Pit Rescue. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. One thing that some people don't know about me is that I ran with a couple co-founders a company that raised money for animal shelters for the last 8 years. It just got out of it, but we raised, I think, about $13 million for animal rescue groups across the country. And I thought this would be a great way to kind of continue that legacy in a way. So they kind of came up with the nonprofits. We came up with the money. We used our designer, Christy Wire, to do all of the graphics. And we're going to do a lot of fun promotion with this. We have a TV commercial that's going to be on KSFY and Fox. I have a billboard, big social media campaign. So we are really trying to do a lot in a short amount of time to raise awareness for both Sioux Empire Pit Rescue and B Squad. I think when people think about, supporting animal welfare in our community, they think of the Humane Society, and the Humane Society does a lot of great work. We've worked with them through the Go-Go Photo Contest business, but there are other animal rescues that don't really get the same time and attention that the Humane Society does. So we thought this would just be a great opportunity to kind of shine a light on Sioux Empire Pit Rescue and B Squad, and just say, hey, these people are here too, and they need help. They rescue dogs, and those dogs need to eat and get vet care and all that stuff. So we thought this would be a great kind of on-brand product for us, great for Remedy, great for the animal welfare groups, and it's kind of a win-win-win project for everybody. So that's kind of what we're doing. You can buy Market Brew. Matt, maybe you can tell us the places that you could buy it.
Absolutely. So Market Brew is going out next week. It's going to hit the market. It's available for the month of May. And I don't think people realize how intense of a promotion this actually is, because we're not only selling it in our tap room, but we're selling it to a wholesaler who sells it to retailers, bars, restaurants, and all of your off sales like your Hy-Vees, JJ's, Booze Boys. So it really takes our community getting behind this and going out and finding it everywhere they possibly can. We're sending out 60 barrels of this beer that we want to see gone in the month of May. So it's really going to be up to everybody on when you go out to look for it, ask for it, and find it. But it will be available in all of your retailers to take home. So if you want to buy a 6-pack, and $1 from every beer will be donated and split between B Squad and Sioux Empire Pit Rescue. So it's really a fantastic, fantastic promotion. But again, it takes you guys going out, finding it, asking for it, and really, really pushing this product so we can get through as much of it as possible in the month of May.
Yeah, so you guys are making, what, 25,000 cans of this stuff? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of beer.
That's a lot of beer.
So hopefully people will drink it all.
Absolutely.
And it's $1 a can split between Sioux Empire Pit Rescue and B Squad. So hopefully we can make a $25,000 donation to those two organizations.
Absolutely.
I want to take a second to put this in perspective for people, because I feel like a lot of times people see Matt Paulson do something and it's like, oh, like I'm not surprised. But like we have right now a financial media company and a brewery partnering to help animal shelters. Like that is such a unique combination of businesses and interests, and you guys didn't have to do this, and this is a program that you put on for our community. And I think one of the best parts is that Sioux Falls supports it. Like you couldn't get away with this in some other communities, I think, but Sioux Falls just has a tendency to wrap its arms around some of the stuff that we do here, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
Oh, so are we. I know that's one of the best things about Sioux Falls is just the community feel that we have and the support that everybody brings out for our local players. So we're very excited for it.
Awesome. Matt, I wanted to ask you. So you've done the burger.
Yep.
You've done the beer.
Yep.
Do you have other things that you're working on, or keeping them under wraps, or?
Well, we're putting a $100,000 aquarium in our office. It'll be the largest office aquarium in the community. Be like 400 or 500 gallons. So we're doing that. We are sponsoring the 4th of July fireworks show this year. I think it's going to be back at the fairgrounds, but between Car Swap and Market Beat, we're covering all the costs for that. So there'll be a big community fireworks show. And then after that, I made my team promise we're not going to do any other crazy projects for a while so that we can actually kind of take the summer off. And, I think we'll see in the fall. Maybe we'll do something with Small Business Saturday. That's been a discussion. And we'll see what else we end up doing.
Awesome. Now, Matt Hastad, I'm going to get fumbled here a few times because we got two different Matts in the studio. But Matt Hastad, so you talked a little bit about your switch from being strictly like bar, restaurant, taproom sales to doing a canning line. And I think for a lot of people, they think about a brewery and they think like, oh, they sell beer. And so they don't view that as like a huge transition, a huge switch up in your business model because you're still selling beer in their eyes. But I know personally that a canning line is a whole different operation. So can you talk a little bit more in depth about some of the struggles that you had in rolling out your canning line?
The canning line, well, number one, we got a prototype. So the first thing, we got a canning line that was untested, and we were essentially the real world test model for that. So that has its own, challenges to begin with. But for us, going from primarily doing bar, restaurant, and taproom sales where our margins are good, we can move a lot of product very quickly, to getting into the packaging world where your sales aren't as fast and you have much more costs going into that packaging as well. Your margins are very, very, very slim. And so you go from being a kind of a quality product that you try to get into a few bars to being a quality product that you try to get into everybody's hands everywhere. So you kind of have to shift the entire mentality of that, and now you're looking at a volume game as opposed to just, we want to make X amount of this to sell here, here, and here, and we know what kind of revenue we're going to get. When you sell to the market, you're really selling it to another player who then has to also be on your side to sell that product. So working with distributors has been a completely different side of our business as well, which for us was very, very fun, but very, very challenging because now instead of us being the hands-on sales of our beer, we've got 14 sales reps that just got signed on to sell our product, who also are selling 14 to 15 to 20 other brands. So we're not necessarily always the main focus, we're just becoming another part of the portfolio that they're plugging. So it's a very unique and different type of sales that we're doing. But again, it's fun for us. It's fun for us to see, and it's always a challenge that we try to push.
And one of the things that's interesting about the brewery game lately is that there's a push nationally for people to drink locally or at least regionally. So you're seeing fewer of these, we sell across 60% of the entire United States, and now it's more like we sell across these 5 or 6 states. So are you seeing that a little bit in your work? Because I know that there's a major regional brewery that shrunk down to just a tap room in their hometown.
There's actually been a couple breweries that have done that. Tallgrass Brewing is
That's
one
the one I was thinking
that you can think of. You used to be able to find Buffalo Sweat everywhere. Now it kind of went the way of the Buffalo. So it's interesting to see, and it's a great challenge. But it also forces us to have a little bit of a different thing. Like I said, it's a volume game. So then you have to decide and really be picky about what market you get into and figure out a completely different marketing strategy for each of the markets that you're trying to get into. Because each market is its own unique thing, and depending on how established they are with craft beer, you have a completely different strategy going in. So getting a tap line or a permanent placement at a retailer is very difficult to do because so much of craft beer is what we call rotation nation. Onto the new, onto the next, what's hot, what's upcoming. So it's hard to establish core brands while at the same time having a unique one-off or something that you can push into the market that is maybe an allocated item or a one-time brew.
So Matt Paulson, cycling back to the Market Brew, I know that with the Market Beat Burger, you got to do like a sample of like a couple different burgers that Chef Lance put together. Was it a similar process for the Market Brew beer?
Yeah, we had a conversation about like what kind of beer we wanted to make, and we decided we wanted a spring patio beer. We all met with the Remedy team at their store saying, okay, what are some options? We tried a few different things. We kind of settled on something that we thought would be a good approach for this time of year. And then they brewed a sample batch at their store. And we thought, yep, this is the right stuff. And now they're doing a full production. Our team was there, was it last week or the week before, when I think on the day that they added hops, I think, right? Yep. And I think they're going to do canning tomorrow.
Yep.
So I think some of our people will be there for that. And, obviously we're not brewmasters, but that doesn't mean we can't help and kind of watch them do it. And that's been a lot of fun to see their crazy production facility and just kind of see the whole process from beginning to end.
Yeah. You might not be a brewmaster, but you've got taste buds, right? You know what you like and what you don't like. I've never seen your production facility. I'll have to check that out.
That's
sure.
the question I want to ask is like, your production facility is like the craziest building I've ever been in, because it was like built over time and it used to be like 5 different things. Can you tell us maybe about the history of that building and like what are some of the stories you've heard about it?
We've heard so many stories about it, and it's been fascinating for us digging into it, because when you look at the floor layout and the plan of it, the city themselves have 17 different additions that were made to this building that are documented. So there's many more that maybe weren't documented and not necessarily done properly. So for us, going through a wall and finding a hidden room that was bricked off for some reason, and just all of the different stuff. But originally it started off as a dairy, or I should say, originally it started off as a base hospital for the Army base. And then very quickly it became a dairy, and it was dairy for quite a while. Then it became tire storage, so it was a giant tire warehouse, and then it became Rise, which was Raceway Indoor Sports Entertainment, and they had indoor go-karts, batting cages, glow golf, a rock wall, all sorts of just really unique stuff. Unfortunately, they overextended themselves, tried to open in summer, and as you know, in South Dakota, we don't go inside in the summer. So they very quickly ran out of money and declared bankruptcy, and the building sat empty for quite some time since then. So when we took it over, a lot of the building was, or should have been, condemned. But we decided to rehab it and refurbish it, and now we have a production facility. So it's a really unique space.
Interesting. I don't think I'd ever heard of that Rise organization that you talked about. And it's funny because it sounds kind of like a place that I've been to in Minneapolis, which is right under Black Stack Brewing.
Sure.
Which is Can Wonderland, which is they have mini golf and live music and a bowling alley and stuff there. So
Perfect.
That's interesting. So about the Market Brew beer, when you gave them like a sample, do you have like small batch like production? I know you can do like a 1-barrel brew system. I know that some people have smaller systems like that they can make smaller batches on for tests. Is that kind of how you made that, or did you have to make it on your 5-barrel brew house? Or
So we're very fortunate. When we first started, we were on our 5-barrel system, and we had a 10-barrel homebrew kit that we would do a lot of our test batches on, or a 10-gallon, not 10-barrel, sorry. And it very quickly realized that a lot of the beer that we were producing on the 10-gallon wasn't up to the standards that we could get on the 5-barrel. So we've hired on another brewer, Tyler Wasberg, actually. And Tyler and Jason and Tyler Jepperson, too many similar names, they're such a fantastic and creative brew team that we've gotten to the point where we're very confident with what we can do on the 5-barrel system. So now we use that 5-barrel system as our test batch. So it's a pilot system for us now, which a lot of breweries are running on a system that is that size for their production. And for us, it says a lot about how much support we've gotten from the Sioux Falls community, where we can use our 5-barrel plant as a, test batch.
Awesome.
Well, shouldn't we answer some of those questions?
Yeah, there's some questions building up. Okay, I'll ask some audience questions. So Rick Altoff says, what other costs of production increased because of the pandemic?
Everything. So shipping, again, there was an aluminum shortage, so our cans doubled to tripled in price. And one of the big problems with that can shortage was we're not the only players in the game. And there was very much a shortage of production of aluminum in the United States. There's really only 2 companies that produce aluminum cans, and their customers aren't just breweries, it's Coca-Cola, it's Pepsi, it's all of these major beverage producers as well. So if you don't have the buying power to buy, a container full, you kind of get put to the back of the list. So that was one of the big things. It wasn't just the price of cans, it was sourcing them, where we could find them. All of a sudden our production times went from, yeah, we can get you, 20 pallets of cans, but it's going to take 8 to 12 weeks, to we don't know when we're going to get to that because it's not enough. You're not high enough priority for us. So it really became interesting to try to do some different spot buys and seeing just kind of what those spot prices were as opposed to contractual. So that increased, cost of labor went up, all of our utility costs increased a little bit. But we're very fortunate, again, where we were in a position of market stability, and we had such great sales right out the gates from our cans, where we didn't necessarily have to pass much of those costs onto the consumer, and we're able to kind of just eat them and really tighten our belt in other places.
Awesome. Looks like we have another question from Maureen Ohm of Market Beat. She says, Matt Hastad, you mentioned that you still do a lot of packaging by hand. Do you anticipate buying more machinery for the packaging? Do you have goals/thresholds you'd like to meet in order to have an investment like that?
Yes. So packaging is one of the big things that we're absolutely looking at for the future, and what we would need to get to from a production standpoint in order to make those purchases, and to where it becomes not only a labor concern, but a safety concern as well, when you're pushing packaging teams to their brink and really expecting them to do. So for instance, our canning line right now can do 45 cans per minute. But if we get to a certain level, we can actually bump that up to 90 cans per minute. So if you can imagine trying to take 90 cans per minute off the line and shove it into a box and hope that you're keeping up with it and not getting a backflow, it's very much a safety concern of ours as well. So yeah, we've got our goals, we've got our points of sale that we'd like to hit before we start making those investments, but it's always something that's on the back of our mind, and we're always looking to upgrade.
Awesome. Andrea Carstensen says, where is your production facility at?
It's actually about 2.5 blocks south of the Sanford Premier Center. If anybody knows where the American Legion is actually right across the street from the old American Legion. American Legion. I think they're called the Alliance now, and they took over the old K-back space that was up there. But yeah, it's a large production facility with a red roof that currently is not open to the public. So feel free to drive by, but we're not doing tours yet, just for safety concerns, and we're just not able to staff it. So
I'm going to interrupt my line of questions over here because that ties back to a question that I had. And so you've experienced a lot of growth over the 4 years that you've been open. What is your staffing at right now? Like how many people do you have on your team cranking out all these beers?
Currently we're at 18, and our production staff has 5. So we've got 13 people that are front of house, and actually our biggest labor costs come from our tap room itself. Okay. So it's funny when you get into production, bigger machinery doesn't necessarily mean more hands. A lot of times bigger machinery actually can run with fewer operators, and you get much more product for much less labor. So that's been nice for us, having those cost savings, but we're just happy that our tap room is starting to open back up, and we can bring back a lot of the staff that we had to furlough, and get back to, again, some sense of normalcy and see people out enjoying our beer in the setting we want them to enjoy it in.
Because that's one of the great things about Remedy is you guys have one of the best tap room / patios in Sioux Falls, in my opinion. That's a very fun place to hang out, and you guys are building a sense of community right there.
Well, thank you.
You have your Oktoberfest thing every year where people are bowling pumpkins. It's a lot of fun things happen at Remedy. Jason Honey says, Matt, be honest, you'd like to wear lederhosen every day at work if it was more socially acceptable, right?
Who says I don't? No, I love, for our Oktoberfest every year, I bust out the lederhosen. I've got some authentic leather lederhosen, and it's just a blast. For us, we try to go all out, and again, because beer's fun. It's a fun way to get people together to celebrate and just relax and enjoy life and enjoy the beauty that we have here in Sioux Falls.
So we talked about sourcing cans. Where do you source your authentic leather lederhosen?
Actually, it took some online digging back when I had purchased them previously. So they were actually imported from a European company. But now I think you can find authentic ones on Amazon. I mean, they're shockingly becoming more in style. So
I want to hear the answer to Sadie's question. So let's ask Sadie's question.
Sadie Swear says, from what I hear from business owners in DTSF, you are asked to be a partner with community organizations for so many opportunities, DTSF included. How do you know when to say yes or no to certain opportunities?
yes, that is a very good question. One of the things about running a business, and any entrepreneur or business owner in Sioux Falls will tell you this, as soon as you get your doors open, everybody kind of puts their hand out and says, hey, we want this. Can you donate to this? We're doing a fundraiser. Can you give us swag or a gift card or things like that? We try to promote as much as we possibly can, but after our first year and a half, we had to set a budget for both donations, but then also kind of look at each of the projects that we're asked to partner with on time. What's the cost going to be from us when it comes to our effort to put in? Most of that usually comes from labor, but then also if it's a good fit for us and what we do. So there's a lot of things we'd love to raise money for that maybe we can't partner with due to another organization's policies or what they feel. So alcohol is a very interesting business to be in because traditionally people have tried to distance themselves from it, but that mentality is changing a lot and people are realizing if you serve beer, it's not necessarily that you're inviting people to come and get drunk. You're just trying to create a little bit of a social lubricant to let people open up and get more involved and relax. So a lot of that mentality is changing, but it has caused some issues for us when it comes to figuring out who we want to partner with and how, just from a operational standpoint.
Are you trying to tell me that craft beer is cool?
Oh, it's absolutely cool.
So why did you say yes to Market Brew when you say no to many other things?
For you guys, it was you guys have a very unique sense of how you want to donate. So you're both looking to give back to the community. You're also looking to raise awareness for your brand, but you're also looking to raise awareness for our brand.
Sure.
So it's a great way for us to basically partner up and promote everybody all at once rather than necessarily focusing on one or the other. And just your history as well and seeing what you've given to the community made it a no-brainer for us. And honestly, we love making unique beers for people. And so to raise money for our favorite organizations with partnership with you, easy, pull the trigger on that one.
Sounds like a win-win-win situation.
Yes.
We got another question from Jonathan Oppold on Facebook. He says, will Market Brew be available in 1/6 barrel kegs?
Yes. Yep. So Market Brew will be available in, we call those sixtels or 6 barrels, half barrels, which are actually the larger kegs, and also in cans at your local retailers. So you'll be able to see them in bars and restaurants and in your local retailers as well.
So Matt Paulson,
Yes.
I've got a question for you. So Market Beat seems to kind of single-handedly be trying to change the landscape of how people give back in the city of Sioux Falls. Like we've talked about already, the Market Beat Burger and the Market Brew. Like you're pioneering this new method of giving back. Do you have visions for how other people might be able to do that? And do you have maybe some advice for someone who's listening who wants their organization to give back in a way like that, but maybe they don't have the signature Matt Paulson creativity that goes along with that?
Well, so I think there are a lot of nonprofits struggling to raise money in our community. There's Cindy Peterson recently told me there are 3,000 nonprofits in Sioux Falls, and they are all competing for kind of a finite pool of donor dollars. And there's definitely kind of a sense of donor fatigue, and there are people that get asked, including me, all the time to give to everything. And I just don't think that method or that practice is going to be sustainable for the long term. I think more established nonprofits are going to be struggling as kind of some of their donors age out. And I think organizations, nonprofits, and for-profits that want to support nonprofits alike need to come up with some new models. So one of the things that we're going to try to do over the next few years is just try some different things and see what works and what resonates with the community. And the Market Beat Burger was kind of the first thing, and we learned some stuff from that. We're doing it again with Market Brew, and who knows what's next. But I think kind of the key components are, one, awareness, like how can you make it more about the organizations that you're trying to support than about yourself. So we want kind of B Squad and Sioux Empire Pit Rescue to kind of be the stars of this thing. Because I think when you make it too much about yourself, then it just looks like it's a marketing thing, a self-promotion thing, and that doesn't resonate as well. So if we can lift up another small business in town with Remedy and a couple of nonprofits, everyone's kind of brand is elevated at the same time, and I think that's a kind of a winning combination. But two, I think you also really have to do something that just hasn't been done before. There are a lot of the same fundraisers that happen every year, and I think kind of over time they wane in interest because it's, I saw that last year, did that last year, don't need to do it this year. But when it is something kind of brand new, then you have the opportunity to get media attention in ways that you might not otherwise, and just create buzz and awareness that you might not otherwise as well.
Awesome. So there's a post from Facebook from Michael Tveit. I don't know how to say his name. He's in our Leadership Sioux Falls class. I'm sorry, Michael. Do you know how to say his last name?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
No, wait, Tweet. I think it's Tweet.
Tweet?
I think it's Tweet.
There you have it, Michael Tweet.
Don't tell me if I'm wrong later.
He said to tell the kickball story, and I'm not sure who that's directed at.
Well, it's got to be you.
So we have a kettle sour that is called Kickball, and it's a Berliner Weiss style beer. One of the things that when you're making a kettle sour, you're actually mixing bacteria into some raw product, and you want that bacteria to produce lactic acid. The problem with that bacteria is if it interacts with oxygen, it will create a lot of off flavors that can taste like baby vomit. So it's not a desirable characteristic that you want to put in your final product. So you have to prevent any oxygen from getting into a boil kettle. Boil kettles are not traditionally designed to prevent oxygen. So what a lot of breweries will do is they'll just bubble a ton of CO2 through the bottom of it when they mix in their bacteria in order to prevent any oxygenation from happening. One of the problems with that is expensive. CO2 is expensive, and a lot of that CO2 then just escapes out into the atmosphere, so it can be a very CO2 intensive beer to make. So for us trying to figure out how to combat that, the big thing is we've got a vent stack on the top of the boil kettle, and we needed to find a way to plug that vent stack. And we talked to a bunch of different HVAC companies, and there's not just a very nice valve that you can put into a vent stack in order to close it off. So after a while, we were kind of sitting around and thought, well, what if we just pump a deflated kickball up into there, inflate it, and see if we can plug that vent stack? And it worked perfectly. So that is where we got the name Kickball for that beer, is we actually plugged the vent stack with the kickball, and you'll find a lot of breweries actually do that now. And it's just kind of became the easy name for that. So it's one of the creative ways that you'll see local breweries trying to figure out unique solutions to unique problems that we find in the industry.
So Matt, you mentioned that you can make the beer taste like baby vomit. Is that something you've tasted frequently and kind of know the flavor profile of?
Sadly, yeah. It's one of those things where when you go through your quality control and are always looking and doing your tests, a lot of people don't realize a lot of QC in the brewing world is taste. Yeah. You can very quickly figure out if something's going wrong fast by doing a quick taste sample, as opposed to having to do a whole bunch of laboratory tests.
So you talked about kicking off a lot of CO2. Do you try and capture that in any way, or?
So that's one of the big dirty secrets about brewing, is that it is a very CO2 intensive industry. And there are lots of technologies that are coming online now where you can actually recapture a lot of that CO2 and put it back in. But a lot of your small local breweries are not able, unfortunately, to do that, just from a cost standpoint and from a labor standpoint. So for us, we've got a few different techniques that we use in order to try to cut down our CO2 usage. However, recapture, we're just not at the level or state to be able to do that.
So if you're able to recapture it, then could you do something with it? Okay.
So you'll see a lot the ethanol industry actually shares a lot of the same technology as the brewing industry. And that's one of the big things that the ethanol industries will actually do is recapture their CO2, and they don't have a use for it, so they'll sell it off to your Coca-Colas or to your, Trulies who are trying to put more CO2 into their product.
Yeah, I've seen an infographic from Poet talking about like if it stops at this level, then it's basically beer. Do we have any other questions here? Mary Devaney, she's the most recent one, says, during the pandemic with supply shortages, did you do any collaborative purchasing with other local breweries?
Yes. So Fernson Brewing has been absolutely a fantastic local partner that we've gone with in order to use both of our purchasing powers to buy cans, buy lids, and also even just fruit. One of the other costs that has gone up significantly is shipping. So if we can put in bulk orders together, it saves us both significantly on shipping and on costs as well.
Yeah, it's like you talked about earlier. If you can't buy a full container of cans, you get kicked to the back of the line. Well, if you and Fernson both place your order together, they're both going to Sioux Falls. You can take it from there. That's
correct.
Interesting. Marine Ohm from Market Beat again says, it's amazing how much science there is in the brewing process. Do you find that your brewing staff comes from a science background or simply loves craft beer and therefore learns the science?
I'd say it's definitely more the latter on that. It's more people that love craft beer and get into it and then realize all those boring science classes they took in high school or college actually come into play and have some real world implications. And at the end of the day, you drink beer. So it's one of the things where we don't see a lot of people that have a hard science background or know exactly what's going on, but they come in with a general understanding and some base knowledge and then really just kind of dive in, and we can kind of see their eyes light up and their brains click on, and it's a fun thing for us to witness.
I think I took a tour of Remedy at one point and I heard a story about in your early days, like a certain percentage of your beers like weren't turning out and you couldn't figure, and then someone joined who was a science person and they're like, oh, well, here's where you're going wrong from like a science perspective. That's why that beer went bad.
Yep.
How can you talk a little bit more about who was that? I can't remember it well enough.
So Jason and I were brewing in my garage. And it was one of those things where we got to the point where we were brewing very good beer, but every once in a while we'd have a batch that would go south on us and we didn't know why. And so we looked at the process, and brewing is very much a process. All beer is made the same way. It's just little tweaks to that process, and adding that scientific focus can take you from good homebrew to excellent beer that's consistent. And that was one of the big things that we had was when Tyler came on, he looked at a lot of our processes and said, oh, you're not doing it wrong. You just need to do this in order to do it better. And that really helped us out, and it took us to that next level. And we've been very fortunate where when we add more people, we keep adding people that take us to that next level. And so it's we're hoping we can keep that trend going.
Did Tyler have a science background? What was his experience?
So he is a biochemist. He has a biology degree and a chemistry degree from Augustana College. So he was actually working in some cancer research labs here in Sioux Falls. And I somehow convinced him that he should open a brewery instead of take the good money. So.
Craft beer, the most delicious flavor of science. Let's see here.
I think that's all we have for questions.
Is that all we have for questions? Okay. I'm always really bad at determining what's a question and what's a comment.
I don't know. I
from
think
the
it's
audience.
time to ask the last question.
Is it time to ask the last question? Wow, we get carried away here. Well, I'll ask the last question, Matt. You've been here before, so you know it. But what can we, as the 1 Million Cups community here in Sioux Falls, do to help you?
For us, it's just continue to raise awareness about the amazing people and projects that are going on in Sioux Falls. For us, it's the more we support each other, the more we just grow as a community and everything gets better.
Awesome. Look for more opportunities to plug in with the
Buy
fun
Market
folks.
Brew.
Buy Market Brew. Look for
Absolutely.
opportunities to plug in.
Got a lot of cans to sell.
Be on the lookout for the Queen Bee mascot bopping around downtown Sioux Falls. Well, thank you all for joining us. Next week, as a reminder, we will be downtown at the Museum of Visual Materials. We're going back in person. Another great thank you to the team here at Pinnacle. This has been amazing. I've never felt more like a news anchor in my entire life. I sit up here, see myself on the screen. So before we go, let's quick talk about what we got coming up, and then we'll plug our sponsors here. So next week, we have Tyler Brockle of Trigger Interactive. And then we have Jody Schwan talking about Pigeon 605, her new venture. And then Megan Raposa of Sioux Falls Simplified talking about Sioux Falls Simplified. If you haven't, by the way, sign up for Sioux Falls Simplified. It's a free newsletter that gives you the lowdown on what's going on in Sioux Falls.
Peter.
Yes.
Let's say somebody has joined us since the start of the pandemic and has never been to 1 Million Cups in person before. Well, what do they need to know for next week?
What you need to know for next week, it happens at 9 a.m. just like it happens here. You can come a little bit early and chat with people and have some coffee. It's at the Museum of Visual Materials downtown, and you get the opportunity to do all the same things we're doing virtually, except now they will be in person. So you'll raise your hand in person and ask your questions rather than doing it virtually.
Yeah. Well, what's our update or what's our status on, well, there will be coffee there, so you don't need to bring coffee. Are we doing streaming, or are we going to try?
We might try. It's not going to have nearly the same level of Pinnacle production sizzle, but you might see someone like throw a phone up. I don't know the answer to that question actually.
We'll do our best, but we really encourage you all to show up in person next week if you're comfortable, and shake some hands, or maybe not shake some hands, but like wave at people and connect with people you haven't seen in a while. We'd love to see you all in person again next week.
Yeah. Come bump some elbows. We've missed your faces, and seeing them on a screen just isn't quite the same. But yeah, we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much to our sponsors, which are First National Bank in Sioux Falls, Market Beat, the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, where I work, Pinnacle Productions for all the amazing work they've done with our virtual streaming here, and then next week we'll be at the Museum of Visual Materials. So we'll see you all then. Looking forward to it.
Great job, guys. That was fun.